All right, call the meeting to order. We properly noticed.
It's been posted according to law.
Roll call.
President Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Holm.
Here.
Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Wisniewski. Here.
All right, citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the Village Board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject must specifically relate to matters under the jurisdiction of the Village Board. Whether on the agenda or not, the Village Board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of this citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they're participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the Village Board due to involvement in an agenda item. No? Going once? Going twice? Okay, we'll close that. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. One motion, a second, will approve all the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list, voted on separately. I'm going to ask that we pull item 2. There's some additional consideration that has to be on that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 2.
Joe seconded that. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. You're all done.
For item 2, we're asking that the board consider approving that contingent on the applicant appointing an agent that meets residency requirements. The agent they had appointed does not meet residency requirements. And then obviously conditioned on staff review and approval of a background check. So if the board's comfortable, rather than hold up the applicant, staff would review that agent through the background check and approve it. Otherwise, we can bring the agent back if the board does not feel comfortable with that.
Do you guys feel comfortable with that? Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the reserve Class B liquor license to Excellent Cafe LLC contingent upon them identifying an agent that meets residency requirements and that staff is able to successfully complete a background check for that agent and make and that they would normally recommend that this be approved. All right, questions or discussion on my convoluted motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to miscellaneous business. Item 1, consider Village Board vacancy due to Trustee Renucci's resignation with possible action to fill the vacancy. Before we go through, Eileen's got some information for us. I just want to thank, Forty's not here, as Eileen's memo says, he's served 33 years in some capacity for the village. I said something about that I'm starting my 10th year. And he goes, oh, you got another 20 years in you. And I was like, I don't know about that. So that's just amazing to me. And, we're celebrating our 125th anniversary this year as a village. That's a significant part of that 125 years that 40's been a part of this village. So I know he's not here, but for the record, I want to thank him for all of his service and support of everything that we do.
Does he get a bench?
I think that would be an agenda item for later. I'm contemplating. He doesn't want a big deal, but we'll see. So we'll move on to the memo here at hand. So this was something that 40 came in and that was of his own decision. So kind of, Eileen, you want to walk us through your memo and some other information you've learned?
Sure. So the board has a couple options when you have a vacancy. You can hold a special election. Obviously, timing is always a consideration. As we experienced with Trustee Smalley's term, we included that on the ballot in April. If we were to to schedule a special election when there's not another election scheduled, the village does bear the full cost of that election. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about timing and how it's kind of an issue in this case. So we are legally required to publish certain notices leading up to an election. So we would still be required to publish what is called the Type A notice. Normally, in a spring election, we would publish that in November. And then we start circulating nomination papers in December, which are due, they are given about 5 weeks to submit those. And then we have to publish a type E notice for absentee voting, et cetera, et cetera. So when I talked to the county clerk today, just to get a general idea, I did not talk to the Elections Commission to get specific, but I just wanted a general idea of like, what are we talking timeframe-wise? A special election would be at a minimum, if a primary was not required, about 3.5 or 3 months. And then if a primary is required, a minimum of 4.5 months from when we make the decision. So that's a significant portion of that term. There are not any statutory requirements if the board opts for an appointment, how you go about deciding to do that appointment, and historically, boards have done different things. Historically, boards have asked for applications and interviewed applicants at meetings. They've taken somebody who was on the ballot for this last election and appointed that person. So that's completely at the board's discretion. If it's a shorter term, the league doesn't necessarily recommend that you have to fill it, like, kind of like Trustee Smalley's, but for something like this, they say a reasonable time period. So I would assume a year is not considered a reasonable time period to not have a board member to have one vacancy.
I'll jump in. I agree. I do not think having an election with the timing is a good idea. I also don't feel like we can wait a year. I've had the privilege of serving with two of the people who registered after both Scott as well as Dusty. Both, I realize, are dedicated to the village, were willing to serve. So I'm looking to the voters, and Scott received more votes than Dusty, and I feel like our decision should be based on what the people who voted for those two candidates. I would like to recommend that we appoint Scott Seeger to the position.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Based on what Mary outlined, and I did a tally of the votes as well, I thought whoever was the next highest vote getter would be the obvious choice, and that was Scott. So I would second that motion.
Was it Donald Duck?
No, he was.
There were a couple others that were of interest, but
We won't have that. Anticipating that this might be what we would do, I did talk with Scott to make sure that he would be available and would be willing, and he is. So, so I think if we want to, if we've got a motion and a second here, would that be effective the 15th when our other two trustees take office?
I think if you guys are inclined to appoint Scott Seeger, I would recommend you do that sooner, only because you're a 4-member board right now. Now, chances are very slim, but if we had to have an emergency meeting right now, we need all 4 of you to be able to make it to meet.
Can we make that effective immediately? Or do we have to wait a day or two, or how does that work?
I guess effective when he signs his oath,
Yeah.
right? Because he's got to fill out the oath paperwork with Danette. All right, other questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll welcome Scott back to the board. Sorry, I'm trying to find my place again. Item 2, consider award of storage tank painting project bid. Jason?
There we go. We're looking at doing the exterior painting on the 650,000 gallon storage tank south of town. If you remember, we painted the interior of that in 2019, and now we're looking to paint the exterior. The exterior has not been painted since the tank was constructed in 1999. We had, we bid this with Strand, and we received 10 bids. I don't think I've ever received 10 bids on a project before. So obviously, right now, tank painters are hungry. So obviously, there was a lot of interest in the tank painting project. We had budgeted $250,000 for the project, $50,000 for engineering, and $200 for painting. And the low bid came in at $54,000. And I would say typically that's kind of a red flag, right? I mean, it's extremely low. However, there's similar bids. There's 3 or 4 bids that are not far off of that, and the low bidder is LC United, who painted the inside of this tank previously. So they're a known contractor. We've worked with them. They did a real good job on this tank when they painted the inside. So we're looking to asking the board to award the project to LC United.
So classic protective coatings, they came in at 387. Why were they so high?
I asked the same question to engineering, and the only response I got was, for some of these certifications, you're required to bid a certain amount of contracts every year or projects every year, and that one was just throwing a dart at the wall.
Do we
They didn't
antici-
want it.
Do we anticipate any engineering budget challenges here?
I don't think so. We had a fair amount of inspection time because with this project, you can only clean a portion of the tank in the day and then paint that same portion. So there's plenty of visits from engineering, but I think we're going to be in good shape knowing this contractor. Things could go sideways, but I think the way things are right now, we're sitting pretty good.
Can you talk a little bit about just, you mentioned, I remember we did a few years ago, the inside, but you said in your memo here, the tank will be empty, so we'll do an assessment interior. So what does that process and timeline look like?
So basically, staff empties the tank, and then the contractor comes in and rinses it out, cleans it out, and then if there's any spots where the interior coatings have failed, we have an allowance built into the bid that I think it's $350 per repair, up to 10 repairs, for them to go in and then address those repairs while the tank is empty. And then also, part of this project is to do the 5-year inspection on it for DNR.
So how long will it be empty?
We're giving the contractor, I believe it was 60 days in the contract, and that should be worst-case scenario. And I believe Substantial was slated for September 1. So I would say no more than probably 45 days.
At the risk of asking a dumb question, I'll ask a dumb question. So is there any impact then on fire protection there?
So yes, absolutely. When we take this tank out of service, we always notify the fire department. That's the first thing, because that's 650,000 gallons of water we will not have on hand to fight a fire. So we still have the 200,000 gallon tank on Main Street that will be in service, but we will be down.
I don't want to sound facetious, but is there a possibility they may have to come back with us if there's tariffs on paint that go up?
That's a great question. I will tell you, working through budget stuff right now, I'm already hearing the word tariff a lot. And however, they've provided this bid, so they essentially need to adhere to that bid. Is it possible they could come back? I wouldn't say no, but I think it would be. I think they need a pretty good reason to have to come back and want to adjust their bid now.
I'll make a motion to award the painting of the tank to LC United for a bid of $54,000.
Second.
Okay, Jim seconded. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to this, consider approval of SCADA computer replacement proposal. Jason?
Okay, so the SCADA computers are the computers that we utilize to monitor the utilities, alarms, levels, things like that. And so they're essentially the brains of our utility systems. They control pumps, things like that. And the computers, the hardware and software, are in need of upgrade. They were last upgraded in 2018, so it's time to do that again. And so basically, what we're looking at here is 2 computers. One is the server, which is the main, the main data hub, and some software. We're upgrading to a different alarm notification platform. Currently, the one we have is application-based, and unfortunately, right now, there's not a good application-based software out there for this, for these sorts of alarms. So it's going to be a voice-over with the option of the top view is the supplier we're looking to move towards on recommendations not only by Allen ICS but others in the industry that are currently using it. Staff went and checked out. I think it was Waterford utilizes this, and they went and spent some time over there seeing how their operations worked. And right now, it's our best option. Top View is investigating an app-based platform moving forward, but it's not there right now. And the problem we have with the current platform we use, which is Win911, which is functioning well, but unfortunately, when you transition to a newer version of Windows, you have to transition to a newer version of the app, and that is not functioning well. So we have to go a different direction with that. This is for the software and the hardware. I did price check this quote against Digicorp. Digicorp is our IT provider for the village here, and Allen ICS was cheaper than Digicorp was on the hardware. And this is one that potentially may have some tariff impact, I think, if we don't move forward on it soon.
And it looks like it was more than what originally thought, but you have there is money you can move from another fund? Is that
Yes,
correct?
so the Highway 20 lift station pump has fund has a surplus in the sewer utility capital project, which is where this one is. So yes, I would propose that we take the difference out of that project, and there's still a surplus in that pump project if something goes on there that we need more funds.
Does the motion have to include the transfer of funds? Okay, I'll give it a shot. Okay.
Good practice for you.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the bid from Allen ICS for $39,525 for the update of the SCADA. The money, increased amount of money needed for the project will come from the Highway 20 pump replacement project.
I'll second that. Very good. I'll just also add that to what Jason said about tariffs, we're looking at anything that's computer equipment that we have budgeted for this year, should we accelerate those purchases. The second piece specifically for this is in our budget, we have a security penetration or pen test scheduled for later this year, and so we want to do this first and then schedule that. Questions or discussion, other questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 4, consider right-of-way privilege agreements 2843 school and 2054 division. Jason?
Okay, so this one's going back to last summer. As you all remember, we did the School Street project, and we had a couple of non-conforming driveways that we made some changes in ordinance to allow existing non-conforming driveways to be replaced in kind. And so with that, part of that is a right-of-way privilege agreement being enacted, and then assessing for whatever extra driveway or a driveway approach is installed outside of approved ordinance. And so I had some challenges getting the second agreement signed, and we now have both agreements signed by the property owners. There is still one driveway approach that, when we talked about it at the time, the property owner had asked for the approval to install it himself. And we said, go ahead, and it's still not installed. The other driveway was installed with the project by the contractor, and then the property owner was just assessed for that, and he paid that assessment. But the second one has not yet been installed. I just asked about it, and I was told as soon as the weather warms up, it will be installed. So the only reason I bring this up at this point is I just think we should remember this for next time and, maybe not go that direction. But again, before you tonight is just the approval of the two agreements.
Should we make that part of the ordinance change that we made to, that there's a process here that we won't consider that?
I don't know that that's necessary. I really feel like we have some latitude, and we gave some latitude there. I think we just learned our lesson.
I just had one thing I want to point out. So one of them says it was changed from state of Wisconsin to state of Hawaii. Do we know why?
So that's currently where the property owner is, and so they obviously had it notarized in Hawaii. And as we speak, the docket is the document has been mailed to us. So we have the one. So Matt won't be able to sign it tonight because we've got to have the actual document to file with the county. So.
You asked the same, I'm like, I got it on my screen right here, like, what does Hawaii have to do with this?
I'll make a motion to approve the ROW privilege agreements for 2843 School Street and 2054 Division Street.
Second.
Questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 5, provide direction to staff on Clark Street angle parking. This came out of, we've had a couple of discussions on this, but also at the Plan Commission related to the businesses that are operating at the old church there. Jason, I know you and your team have been doing testing over there. Do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we talked about it, and the board wanted to see a couple of additions or, a couple of things for us to take a look at. One of the things is I had met with Alex Alger. He owns the building on would be the northeast corner of Clark and Main Street there. And he utilizes, there's a little bump in the curb adjacent to his building, and he utilizes that. And he said, I'm not against this at all, but I really want to be able to still utilize that area for short-term parking or loading, unloading kind of thing. So we kind of came up with this loading zone area that's shown on the drawing. And basically that would be painted with some cross-hatching on the pavement and labeled as a loading zone, which would essentially be short-term parking. And then we added a handicap spot on the south end of this near Main Street, which was also the board's request. Talked with Chief Swindowski about it. He feels this will still work. We did talk about some parking concerns, though, as it relates to winter parking. And really, we have two options here. And Chief, jump in when you like. We can treat this, excuse me, similar to the square, where there is no parking on the streets in this area from 2:30 a.m. to 6 a.m. Or we could treat it similar to what we do on the backside of Union Street, which is, that's parking.
That's parking all the time, so every day of the year they can park back there. They just need a winter parking permit from November 1st until March 31st to park on Union Street behind the coffee shop and the liquor store and all those other ones that are there. But if we would treat it like the square and each one block off the square, it'd be no parking from 2:30 until I think it's 5 or 6 year-round. That's no parking, depending on how we treat that block.
And so really that the home on the corner of Main and Clark on the southwest corner would not have any option for street parking in the winter.
Right.
I will say, however, I'm not in.
Well, really, they don't have any street parking at any time.
Wouldn't they currently be able to buy a permit though?
Well, yeah, for winter, but even during the summer, they wouldn't be able to park there either if we treat it like the square. Because the square's year-round from 2:30 until, it's either 5 or 6, I forget. You can't park on the square at all year-round, and then one block off the square also, so that includes between Main Street and Austin Street on Church Street, Division Street between Main Street and Austin Street. That one block on each side of the square, you can't park year-round at night. So if we treat it like the square, then there's no parking there at all year-round at night.
I'm going to ask a dumb question, sorry. So why do we have that year-round, 2:30 to 6:30, whatever it is?
In case DPW needs to come out and clean the square, like if they want to use their sweeper or whatever, and they don't want any cars there, that's why the square's like that. So they can come in at 4 a.m. if they want to and sweep the square.
How often do we sweep the square?
A few times a year.
A few times?
Yeah, we do. It's more of an issue for snow plowing. I don't know if any of you've seen what Union Street becomes after a real winter, which we haven't had a few, but because cars are allowed to park there, we can't get in there and clean those parking stalls, and then cars drive on it, pack down, turns to ice, and then when we do catch a break, we try to, during the day, if cars leave, we try to go in there and plow out what we can, but if it's already packed down in ice, it just, it's tough to remove. So I would be against treating this section like we do on the backside of Union, just because of that.
Yeah, the backside of Union, we treat that way because there are apartments there and there are businesses that have a very early start. I don't think that's the case here. And we also, if they really need to, then they could park further down Union Street if they had to.
Last week when we discussed this, I brought it up with Jason, and I don't know, this might take an ordinance, but we could treat it where there's no winter parking allowed at all on Clark Street between November 1st and March 31st. There's just no parking. We don't give out permits, we don't do anything. But then we treat it like from April 1st through October 31st, we can treat it like any other street in the village, like Union Street or any other one. So what we're doing is during the winter, we're saying there's no parking between 2:30 and 6. We won't give out permits either to park on that block. They won't be allowed. But then April 1st through October 31st, we'll just treat it like it's Union Street, and anybody can park there overnight if they want to.
Do we have, and I'm trying to think, do we have parking stalls like this anywhere other than the square? And on the backside of like we were talking about the other part of Union Street there?
There's some on Lank, but I don't know, I don't know if they're called out in ordinance.
Yeah, I don't even think they're marked right now, are they? I don't think they are anymore. They might be. I'd have to take another look, but I don't think they are anymore. John says no.
Post office, maybe?
Post office is all parallel. So the directly in front of the post office, there's some angle parking, but it's essentially in the right of way, and it's
not
not
on the
really
street.
impeding the street.
So the reason why I say that is I'm a little, like the whole point of this parking is to facilitate people coming to the businesses, right? And I think if we allow the overnight parking during the non-winter months, then we're potentially encouraging some abuse here. I would rather not make an exception for this, it not work out, somebody come to us and say, this isn't working. Similar to what happened in the Union Street one, make their case, and then we'll debate that. But I think right now, we're going to put these in, it's within that one block boundary. We're definitely going to keep it clear in the winter months, and let's continue with the ordinances as they are. That would be my recommendation, but, if you guys have other thoughts, please speak up.
The other thing I just want to mention too is, other than talking with Alex, and then Steve Lambrick had weighed in, he was in favor of this. We haven't talked to any other adjacent property owners, so that was one of the things I kind of wanted some feedback on is how you want that, whether, we talked about potentially a committee of the whole or just a letter sent and asking for responses, or how you would like some input.
Letters sent to whom?
Essentially the adjacent property owners in that area.
I think I would say whoever we notified when we did the work at the church when Steve Lambrex made his application.
For the public hearing, yes.
Because I'd say for two reasons. One is we had people complain about the impact of those businesses and parking. So it's like, hey, this is what we want to do. This is your opportunity to give us feedback on that. We heard your concerns. But I think, two, we do have two residents here along, while their front of their houses do not face Clark Street. They are right there. There's the one there next to Alex's property, and then the one behind the church there. So I think, if we're comfortable with this as a plan, that at least gives direction to staff to include what would be in front of the board for approval. And if they have a concern, then they would be instructed to come at whatever meeting you all want us to approve this on and go from there.
That makes sense.
I guess the last thing I'd ask is about the loading zone. So I know, Jason, you and I chatted about this. So we have a former board member who owns that property. So I think that he's going to be really easy to work with, but he may not always be the owner. Do we need to adjust anything in ordinance so that we don't have somebody trying to park something in a loading zone overnight?
I would throw that to Chief. He's shaking his head yes.
Yeah, I would think we're going to have to address that. We'll have to probably measure that area and come up with an ordinance that says this many feet north of Main Street on the east side is considered a loading zone. And then all the rest would be no parking, correct?
On the east side,
Right.
correct, yes.
So I think, yeah, we're going to have an ordinance that says this many feet south of Main Street on the east side of Clark is considered a loading zone.
So I think that I would package all of that together. So if that's going to take us a few meetings before we get to, that way, because what I don't want is I don't want us to send out a letter and it's like we're really kind of silent on the loading zone piece, and everybody's like, oh, that's good, and then, or no, that's horrible, or, so let's just do it all at once. And
Is there no parking on the other side, on the east side there of Clark? Once we do this?
With this change, correct, there would be no parking at all on the east side, other than short-term in that loading zone.
Any concerns with the residents there?
Well, that's what we haven't talked with them yet, so.
I mean, a good portion there, you can't park there because it's a driveway. So-
Right.
I was glad to see the two handicap place where they were rather than in the middle, which was discussed for a while, but that makes sense.
I think this is a good solution for parking, especially for Lambrick's new business, so it's a good opportunity.
And the beauty of it too is really, it's simply, other than potentially an ordinance change, it's just paint. We're just painting, the pavement, so.
What about the signages that we're going to need, especially for the handicap?
Yeah, there will be some handicap signage, and then we'd probably do a no parking sign also on the east side, and we will paint the curb, but we would probably add some signage as well. But relatively small investment, and if it didn't work, we could always remove all that later.
I like the plan, I like the discussion. I'm just curious, the 20 and a half feet for two-lane traffic, what is the narrowest you can go without creating problems? Are we there?
10 foot. So we actually took some vehicles up and mocked it up, if you will. Parked a bigger pickup truck in the angle parking, a couple of DPW trucks, driving by, and then one with one of Alex's trucks in the loading zone. And it does all work. It gets a little tight in the area of the loading zone, though. But also, I think the volume of traffic that the street sees, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Chief and I have had this discussion. Just don't see it being an issue there. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do something like this on Main Street, but it has some potential here.
So are staff good on direction and consensus that you're hearing from the board on next steps here? Or do you need a motion?
So let's try to do this all in one meeting. Take a look at ordinance and what would need to be called out for the loading zone, and then send a letter out and again, try to do this all in one meeting. What I heard.
Yeah, I'll take care of I'll contact Attorney Gary tomorrow about the ordinance. I'll just need a measurement, Jason, from the intersection down just past Alex's building, however long that loading zone's gonna be.
It might be helpful too, just thinking about this, to define the loading zone and if there's any, like parameters on like a timeline kind of thing, or, I don't know, something to just maybe throw out there and ask their opinion on.
Yeah,
Especially if we ever do this somewhere else, then we already have things that are painted and called a loading zone have these restrictions.
right.
Anything else? All right. I know we've talked about that for a while now, but I appreciate you guys sticking with it. All right, staff reports. Item 1, Fire Chief's February 2025 report. So, we don't have Jason here, but anything here anybody wants to discuss?
Looks like the ladder truck is going to be done March 2026.
Yeah, that's part of a challenge. I haven't had a chance to discuss that with Chief DeGaro. And before somebody asks, yes, question about tariffs. All right, item 2, Police Department 2025 Q1 report. Chief, anything you want to highlight?
For those that didn't know, there was a picture in here, but Detective Heading got the Merit Award from I'm probably going to say this wrong, but it's the Women's Police Association of Wisconsin, or Wisconsin Women's Police Association, something like that it's called. But she got the Merit Award for that back in, when did we go? I think March. They had their conference at Grand Geneva, and so she got the award there.
Chief, I should have asked you this, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you talk a little bit about this 10 years partnership certification that we got from the Attorney General?
Yeah, so that is the Internet Crimes Against Children. It's actually, it's like a federal type thing. The state has a affiliation that they're part of, and then they look for partners from local law enforcement, sheriff's departments, and like municipalities that want to be a partner with them. And then usually when they get a tip of a possible internet crime with children, usually it's child pornography, possession, that wise. If they get a tip and it comes, they do their little thing first, and then if it comes back to the village, they send the tip to us to investigate. because obviously they don't have the staff to do every tip that comes into Wisconsin. So if you're part of their network, they send you the tip, and then you're in charge of investigating that and taking it all the way through. So I think we've had 2 already this year. So, and I think we had 2 last year that came through. So, yeah, it keeps us busy.
It's sad that sort of thing is here even in East Troy, but I'm glad that you all are a part of that, so thank you.
Yeah, it's nice because they have, they offer some free trainings and stuff that Detective Heading has been taking advantage of. And they have an annual conference that she's going to, I think, in May. So it's a lot of good training for her, too. So it's nice.
Questions?
Just a quick comment. So it baffles me that we've got people that have a 5th offense, OWI, and a 4th offense. And again, that baffles me. You got, Uber and, I don't know.
And it's a larger state problem outside of our pay grade. All right, if nothing else on the chief's report, committee reports, item 1, Booth Lake Memorial Park minutes from February 19th. Joe, anything you want to highlight?
I missed the last meeting, but I did see a note that John Morath was going to get the steamroller from Sawyer's. You got it? And you're going to roll the field? All done. Perfect. So, it's good. Thank you.
I did, last time I spoke with Jerry Arnson, he mentioned that you guys will be working on kind of cleaning up some of that agreement language, so that'll come to us at some point, I guess, later this year. All right, item 2, emergency services minutes from February 18th. Again, that was Jason, but any questions or comments for the record? Okay. John, I guess you're here. Anything we should know? The February emergency services meeting?
Well, the ladder truck and the ambulance we've been put out,
Yeah. Okay.
otherwise everything is so priceless.
Okay. All right, item 3, Plan Commission minutes, draft minutes from March 24th. Any questions for me? We approved number 1. That was a special one. It shouldn't be any questions. We just approved it. And then last, minutes from CDA from January 27th. Any questions for Jim or me? We did get some progress on signage on Alpine Valley since then. All right. We don't have a closed session. Wow, what is this? All right, make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.